we've decided to use some new powder and new dies to build some long-range hunting ammo for the 7 PRC. Guy Miner here from UltimateReloader.com. In today's video, we're going to review the 7 PRC, the StaBALL HD, which is a new powder, Winchester StaBALL HD. We're going to take a look at reviewing the Forster Co-Ax, which is a pretty unique press. We're going to get into this new die set from Forster, the Ultra die set. We're going to do some loading here at the bench. We're going to be doing some shooting, and we're going to come to some conclusions about the viability of this combo as a long-range hunting cartridge. So Hornady introduced the 7 PRC last year, and we started working with it in the fall. About October we started working with it. Since then we've worked with it all doggone winter into the spring, and I actually did some hunting with it. Unsuccessful hunting, but it's not fault of the rifle. The 7 PRC, there's some debate about it because it's so close in performance to the old 7mm Remington Magnum, which happens to be a very favorite cartridge of mine, hunting cartridge. I've had really good success with it over the years. And the 7 PRC, a lot of people look at it and say, well, what's it do that the other one doesn't? It's got several advantages. It's got that newer type of case body with no belt and nice sharp shoulders, and it can take that bullet, especially long. This new 175 ELD-X is not the same as the old 175s. Yes, I too was shooting 175s way back in the day, and successfully, of course, out of the 7 mag. But this one's even longer, and this one being longer is now requiring a faster twist, 1 to 8 twist barrel, and the whole thing is just a more modern package. Is it important? That's up to you to decide, okay, depending on the type of shooting you're doing. We'll get into that a little bit more later. In addition to all that, it operates at higher pressures than the 7 mag is spec'd for in the SAMI specs. So the focus I've got on this 7 PRC is as a long-range precision hunting cartridge, in particular using the 175 ELD-X loaded to about 2,900 feet per second. And that's a pretty good combo. That's very similar to what I used over 20 years ago to take a really big bull elk in Wyoming, years and years ago. Different kind of a bullet, but a 175 at about 2,900 feet per second with my 7mm Remington Magnum. This will even beat that performance. A big part of today's story is StaBALL HD. It follows along after StaBALL 6.5. This powder is intended for overbore cartridges and Magnum cartridges like the 7 PRC, 7mm Remington Magnum. I'd kind of like to give it a try in the 257 Weatherby myself, see how that works out. It is a spherical powder, so it flows very easily through a powder measure. That's nice. It also has temperature insensitivity, which has become real popular over the last 20 years, and it's becoming incorporated in more and more powders. Now, not a lot of spherical powders were temperature insensitive. This one is there. It has reduced copper fouling, which is real nice if you're going to be shooting a lot of rounds and you might start getting your bore of your rifle plated with that copper or gilded metal on there. Getting some metal fouling, some jacket fouling. So this helps eliminate that, and not only does it not do very much of that, it can actually cut away at it a little bit, which is good. One of the things I noticed, and others have noticed, is that StaBALL HD produces some very, very good burn consistency and low SD numbers. Also, I'd like to point out Hodgdon's 2023 Annual Manual has an article on both the 7 PRC and StaBALL HD, and Steve Gash authored that article in there, and he does at least 5 different cartridges with the StaBALL HD, and it's got some real good information in there on his article. It's well worth reading. So for this loading project, we went with Forster's Co-Ax. This is a timeless press. It's been around a long time, very unique design, and we've covered it several times before. I used it last year to build some really, really accurate 223 ammo that shot incredibly tiny groups from the 223 trainer rifle that Gavin built, and we'll have a link to that story here. It has some unique features. It has one, really good leverage, which is worth remembering, worth knowing about. Two, and this one floored me when I started using it, it doesn't take a normal shell holder. It has jaws that clamp down on the case head, allowing the case head to float a little bit. Now, that's important for accuracy. What goes along with it is the way that the dies fit in here. They don't screw in place, they actually slide into a slot, and then they're in that position, and so they float just a tiny bit. And when you've got both the die and the shell holder, if you want to call it that, the jaws, allowing that case head to float, you can produce some extremely accurate ammunition. Also, we're using the Forster dies. They come with a bigger lock ring, and that fits very, very nicely in here. If you've got all other dies and you want to use the Forster press, you can get that lock ring and add it to your old dies instead. Although I'd used Forster dies before and found them to be excellent quality, this is the first time that I had used this new Ultra die set. And it's got some really interesting features. It's got that unique lock ring that I mentioned earlier. This set is only available in a few different cartridges at this time, and they are all cartridges near and dear to the precision shooting community. Yeah, that's the kind of cartridge you're going to find this for, at least at this point. It's got a neck bushing buried in here, and we'll be showing you how to select and put one of those in here. And what it does, it sizes the neck, the shoulders, and the body minimally. And that's to avoid overworking the brass. And it sizes it down to where it will fit a SAMI minimum spec chamber. Also comes with a micrometer seating die, which I think if anybody who's ever used one realizes that that is a real boon to being able to adjust the seating depth of your bullet inside that case. This seating die is also a no crimp die, and it keeps a hold of the bullet and the case neck for perfect alignment. Now, the hand load for this comes from Hodgdon Data, with one exception. They had a different company's 175 grain bullet in there, and they went with the Nosler 175 grain AccuBond long range. Good bullet from everything I understand. And we're using the 175 Hornady ELD-X, which is also a very good bullet. I've got a lot of respect for that. We went with Hornady brass. I believe, at least at the time we started getting components for the 7 PRC, Hornady was the only one making brass for it. We went with this new StaBALL, 71.1 grains I worked up to, which is the maximum load with the Nosler long range AccuBond bullet in the manual. It's also a pretty darn good load, and I don't know that I would push past that load. It's plenty fast enough for me. Pretty doggone good with the ELD-X bullet. The Federal 215 Magnum primer is a good one for any Magnum cartridge, especially once you get over about 60 grains of powder, roughly. And you know, there may be times when you want to use that Magnum primer for something less than that, or maybe you want to use a standard large rifle primer. That's fine too, but the Magnum primer is a good idea with Magnum cases where you've got a large column of slow burning powder to ignite. I've found that the Hornady brass is pretty consistent and capable of taking a load that is going to generate excellent performance and really good accuracy too. That's been key to this rifle. The rifle itself is pretty special, and we'll get into that in a bit. I'm pretty much a traditional rifle hunter. I tend to hunt a lot with things like the 30-06, 25-06, 7mm Remington Magnum, that sort of thing. Sometimes some lever guns too. I don't usually stretch the range out real far. 400, 400 and a bit, that's always been fine. I've been able to take all the game I wanted to take. But the long range game is interesting, and a cartridge like this lends itself to some long range performance. And I'm talking out to 600-ish yards or so, which is something that I would actually feel comfortable with. I've done a lot of shooting, used to shoot matches out at 600 yards, and I'm very comfortable with 600 yards, not a problem. Another thing that happens out there at that long range is the bullet speed has dropped significantly. Some bullets are probably well below the velocity required to initiate expansion on game at 500, 600 yards, maybe even shorter than that. This bullet should expand very nicely down to 2,000 feet per second or possibly less. Taking a look at our chart here that I did on the Hornady 4DOF calculator, which is available on their website, I went ahead and printed out the trajectory and the wind drift and the velocity and the remaining energy. And it looks to me like this is probably a very viable load for elk all the way out to 600 yards. We've got 2,134 feet per second remaining at 600 yards. That's with a 175. Interestingly, that is very similar to the muzzle velocity of a 170 grain bullet out of my 30-30 rifle, the muzzle versus 600 yards. Two different animals there. I like both cartridges. It's quite a contrast. And our energy at that distance is 1,769 foot-pounds of energy, which is pretty good. Some people put a lot of stock in your energy developed. I'm not sure that I buy into that too much, but I often hear 1,500 foot-pounds of energy minimum to reliably take an elk. I don't know. I think a good bullet in the right place is going to do the job. That's my thought. It's got a reasonably flat trajectory. Nothing that other cartridges haven't done in the past. I mean, it's starting out around 2,900 feet per second with this bullet. So we're looking at, if it's 0 to 100, it's up about, we're going to drop about 2.5 inches at 200 and about 10 inches at 300, 23 inches at 400. So this is happening. These are all things you can correct for. You can do like I do a lot of times and sight in out there farther at 200 or even 300 yards. You can also use your mean point blank range formula that we used to do a lot back in my day. Still works. Or with today's scopes, you can either use very precise holdovers from the reticle, or you can dial up very reliably, dial up that required elevation and drop this bullet right in where it belongs. So I'm pretty impressed with what I see on paper for this cartridge. So let's get into the actual reloading for this hand load and what we did with the 7 PRC to make it sing. And one of the first things you got to do is start with some good brass. What we've got is some twice fired now 7 PRC brass from Hornady. It's been cleaned and it is ready to be resized and reprimed and used again. So what we're going to do is talk about how to use these Forster dies and how to set up the neck sizing die that we've got with this set. Very important that you have clean brass to start with. That keeps from messing up the very nicely finished interior of these dies. You pay good money for these match grade type dies and you don't want to mess them up. So make sure your brass is good and clean before you start using it. The die itself, isn't that cool the way it just slips in and out of there? The die itself, the sizing die, has a neck bushing that can be replaced. It comes with 3 different neck bushings, and you, the loader, get to determine which one of those bushings that you're going to use. So we're going to go ahead and remove things now. The expander ball comes out. By the way, it's interesting of note here, the expander ball on this is actually set up rather high where the brass case mouth is up higher inside the die and fully supported. That helps keep everything concentric, which should be a help. Now, there is the bushing, and it comes in a package of 3, and this particular one came with bushings marked .308, .310, and .312. Again, we get to determine which one. In the instructions that come with these dies, it says one of the ways to determine that is to measure the case mouth of a loaded cartridge and see what it is. Most of these case mouths that I measured came out to .314. Then you subtract 2 thousandths from that and you come up with .312. And I said, holy cow, I've got one of those right here. So we just take that and we insert it, screw in the decapper with the expanding ball on it. We may have to adjust that a little bit, up or down, to make sure that we are popping out the primers and sizing everything fully. And then back in it goes. Normal sizing operations after that. These lock rings will hold it in there, and what I'm going to do now is lube the case. I love this Imperial sizing die wax. Just a little bit on the outside, get a little on the neck. You don't want to over lube these things. You get creases and all that. I also like to at least take a brush inside of the neck. I found I don't really need anything else. Set it in there. The jaws are going to clamp down, lots of leverage. There it goes. So now our clean one has been all deprimed, resized, primer went right where it belongs in that little jar, and we are good to go. To get that lube off is super simple. Just wipe it off. You can tumble them, of course, if you want, but if you're only doing a limited number of brass cartridge cases, then what the heck, just wipe it off, and again, you are good to go. All right, after we resized and deprimed our cases, it was time to go ahead and reprime them. So, took them on in to the other room where we've got our competition primer seeder set up and primed all the cases there. This time around we're using the Federal 215 Magnum Large Rifle Match Primer. Very good primer for large capacity cases like this that have a slow burning powder in them in particular. After we got them all primed, it's time to add some powder. We're using the RCBS Charge Master, something that you've seen here quite often. It does a nice job of throwing accurate charges, and we went with 71.1 grains of StaBALL HD, a powder that was new to me. So now it's time to seat some bullets. Okay, we've charged some cases. It's time to seat, and what we're going to do is use this very nice Forster Micrometer seeder. This is real nice for coming back to making little tiny adjustments on your seating depth, which can be very important. Today we're using a 175 grain Hornady ELD-X bullet. Let's see what we've got for an overall length on this. Okay, and we'll zero that out. Adjusting it down 5 thousandths. Should seat it just a little bit deeper now. Right at 5. Very nice indeed. 4.5, 5. Nice, consistent, adjustable micrometer seating die. We'll load a few more. You can always use more ammo. So now we're going to take a look at the case overall length of the loaded cartridge. 3.287. That'll work. I like this overall length with Gavin's 7mm PRC rifle because it allows me to fit everything nice and easily in the magazine and to cycle it through the action and eject out even a loaded cartridge if I need to do so. .288. I like that we can make very fine adjustments with this Forster micrometer seating die and that I'm getting very consistent results with my 7mm PRC hunting ammo. Last fall, Gavin built two PRC rifles, one with a very long, heavy contour match barrel intended as a long-range match rifle. This one he built as a long-range precision hunter, a little bit more portable, with a little bit thinner barrel contour and only a 22-inch barrel. And the rationale behind a 22-inch barrel, even with a Magnum cartridge, is the intent of eventually hunting with it using a suppressor and still having a reasonable size package. That rifle, the hunting version rifle, is built on a Bergara Premier Action, very slick. We used a Bartlein 7mm 5R 1-to-8 twist. So Gavin threaded the barrel blank, installed it. He wound up threading the muzzle for either a brake or a suppressor as well. And it's been shooting pretty darn well. He used the Hawken Precision Hunter DBM with the Hunter magazine, which I found was really nice. I hunted with this rifle for a week in Idaho in the spring bear season, and it was very convenient to use, very nice to use. Sadly, I did not get a shot at a bear. We used the Boyd's Agility stock, which is an interesting combo. It's a laminated stock, and it's a little slimmer than many match-type stocks, and a little bit heavier than a lot of hunting stocks. It also has an adjustable comb and an adjustable length of pull, making it really a nice stock for this type of rifle. We used the Riton X7 Conquer 3-24 by 50mm scope, a scope that I learned to respect as we spent a week in Idaho in rain and dry and all kinds of conditions and hiking through the hills and using that as a potential scope for the bear. However, even at dusk and dawn, we did not see the bear. Gave it a good try. The rifle was ready. I was ready. The bear apparently was not. A couple of months ago in April, we tested this same ammunition combination, the same powder, the same bullet, the same case in virgin brass, and we got pretty good results. However, this time around, using the once fired cases and reloading them, I'm theorizing this is from them having been precisely formed to the chamber by fire forming. We got better results. We picked up almost 50 feet per second, going from 2848 up to 2899 foot per second average, and our SD went from 13.8 down to 8 feet per second, which in my book is pretty darn good anytime you get into those single-digit SDs, particularly with a large Magnum type of a cartridge that you're dealing with. We did some shooting at the range with it and delivered some superior performance, which I was impressed with, and we also just had some fun with it out there shooting in the steel yard, stalking steel targets in the afternoon. So we shot in our Ultimate Reloader industrial yard, we call it, at the steel targets at about 100 yards. We actually didn't even measure it out completely. It was just going to be kind of fun. Put the rifle on an Ultradyne UD carbon tripod, which I had not used before. It has a provision for either an ARCA rail or grabbing onto a Picatinny rail. And we used the ARCA on it, and it was extremely steady and made the shooting a whole lot easier. It has an orbit ball head, which could lock the rifle in position. I appreciated that. Here we've got a couple of photos from prior test results with this rifle. One, Gavin is smiling mightily because he just outshot me at 100 yards with this rather nice rifle. Take a look at that tiny group on there. My goodness. And yeah, I didn't shoot quite that well. You can see my target taken in April. Yes, I confess, I have a flyer up high above the target, and then I redeem myself with 3, and they're pretty darn close in the little bullseye spot. In conclusion, on all this shooting and loading we've done with the 7 PRC and using these nice dies and the new powder that's out there, I have got to give high marks to Forster for producing such a cool press and some really interesting dies that look like they're going to be doing a great job for us. Also, Hodgdon and Winchester for introducing this StaBALL HD, which looks very good for those of us who shoot some overbore cartridges and Magnum cartridges. Incorporates a lot of new stuff that has not necessarily been available in our old past favorite powders for those cartridges. Also, kudos to Hornady. They have improved things a little bit in the 7mm field with this cartridge, and also I've become a pretty big fan of the ELD-X hunting bullet, having used one a few months ago to take an elk out of a .30 caliber. 7 PRC round, to me, shows great potential as a long-range hunting cartridge. It's got enough power, enough size, enough weight to take down pretty much anything in North America for sure. I don't know about the rest of the world. I haven't hunted most of the rest of the world, but I have done a lot of hunting in North America. And this Winchester powder looks like a very good complement to the 7 PRC and probably a lot of other cartridges that are somewhat similar. What I want to know is, are you using Forster equipment? Are you using a Forster Co-Ax press? Are you using Forster dies? If so, have you moved up to these Ultra dies? Are you using the Micrometer die, which I find makes seating a bullet very nice and very predictable? Are you using a bushing type die? A lot of people haven't gone into that yet, but it's a good alternative if you're looking for that last little bit of precision. Is that what you're using, or are you using something else? Drop a comment and we'll have a discussion. That means it's time to wrap it up.
I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, we're on Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, where we've got unrestricted content, and Instagram. Make sure to follow us on all those channels. Ultimate Reloader also has a commercial solutions division serving law enforcement, the military, and the gun industry. We have some unique capabilities, including a comprehensive suite of recoil testing and evaluation capabilities, trigger profiling, and more. If you're interested in custom rifles like what we build here on the channel, or gunsmithing services, you're going to want to go to rifles.ultimatereloader.com and get on the wait list. If you want to learn lucrative gunsmithing like what I show here on the channel, including building custom rifles and Cerakote plus a whole bunch more, you're going to want to check out the Colorado School of Trades, schooloftrades.edu. Thanks again for watching.